Hello and welcome to the Godless Family Webcast. I'm your host, Aubrey Adrianson, and tonight with me is my lovely co-host, Amanda. Say hello, Amanda.
Hello.
And tonight with us are Mark and Shanon Nebo of Be Secular. Say hello, Mark and Shanon.
Hey,
hello.
Thanks for having me.
So first, what I want to do is just let Mark and Shanon introduce themselves. And you're more than welcome to also talk about Be Secular. So tell us about yourselves, but also tell us about Be Secular.
Okay, great. My name is Shanon Nebo, and I am the president of Be Secular. Be Secular is an apparel company, and we promote messages that are secular in nature. Mark is wearing our standard black t-shirt, says Be Secular on it. We also have another green shirt that says Church State with a very thick, defined line through it. Another shirt that says Love is Equality. And we have a new leather wrist strap that's handmade in the United States.
I'll display this too. Here you go. Clasp like this, and they're selling like crazy.
And it has the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment on it. So we sell those, and we promote those messages. And we also donate up to 50% of our profits to secular groups. The Godless Family Resource is affiliated with us so that you can make purchases and donate to them. There's a whole big list of other people that we're affiliated with.
37, I think.
37 now?
Yeah, 37 affiliates. So
we go to conferences and have the privilege of being able to talk to lots and lots of very awesome people, and that's what we do. I guess I'll talk a little bit more personally about myself. I have a 10-year-old son who is asleep, I hope. And Mark and I are working on another one. I'm about 3 months along now. So.
We heard the heartbeat today for the second time. It was exciting.
That is exciting. Oh my gosh.
We have a very, I would say, seemingly traditional kind of family arrangement. Mark and I are married, and we don't go to church, but he goes to work, and I stay home, and I run the business, and I run our household, and do things with Johnny. So I'm very. Like, the whole secular parenting thing is really very important to me. It's important that secular parents have space to talk about their experiences and how our struggles are kind of different, and what our kids go through can be very different than what other kids go through.
Right. Great. Mark, you want to add anything?
Oh, I just try to support Shanon in her efforts as the head honcho of the house and of Be Secular. I try to use I guess my talents would be public speaking and marketing to guide our efforts. I try to do the best I can with that. As far as the family goes, I'm Johnny's stepdad, so the one in her belly is going to be my first half human. So I'm pretty excited about that. I guess a lot of this stuff is new to me. I hope that I do a good job as a step parent, but a lot of things are kind of new. And Shanon will tell you that I have a little bit of a I'm not quite as emotional as some people, so I have a hard time communicating that sometimes, and Shannon's helped me with that, and I hope that I'm able to do that with my kids. So.
Great.
Yeah,
I'm not a very emotional person either, and so a lot of people take that for disinterest. It's like, no, I just don't express my emotions very much. Unless I'm pissed. then I'm out there with it.
Yeah, I do okay expressing frustration, but not so much, sadness or anything like that.
even though he took to the stepdad role very naturally and easily. So, I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, you know, I had dated other guys before Mark and between my son's father. And it always seemed kind of like forced and weird, like they were trying too hard, or I don't know, they just couldn't really relate to Johnny. But Mark and Johnny hit it off like right away, and it was very easy and nice. And he coaches, he's an assistant coach for Johnny's soccer team, and
Yeah, thanks, honey. Nice to you say that.
No, that's good. It is hard. I know that my brother is a stepdad, and he has a hard time relating to his stepson. It's been kind of a struggle for him. I know that. So it's not easy.
I was just going to say that it seems like such a tough situation all around for everybody involved, and it just takes a lot of work. So I commend anybody who is able to make a family work with a step-parent or a stepchild. I think it's great.
I had a really strong stepmom when I was a kid, and she came into my life when I was like 5, and she kind of sheltered me from a lot of things that I didn't find out until later in life, you know, and looking back on that, you know, that made a big difference on me. So
Definitely. That's awesome.
You know, I also find that kids gravitate more towards adults that are just going to be real with them. They aren't going to just, fake it. And as a teacher, they, one of the things that they taught us in college is the kids are going to eat you alive if you're faking it with them. Just be real, be yourself, and they'll like you. If you pretend to be someone you're not, they're just gonna see right through that and tear you apart. And I think that rings true with step parenting as well. Just be real, be who you are, and treat them like little people, and it works out fine.
yeah, it's always, I mean, Johnny's very open with Mark. I mean, he's very open with me too. We didn't really, we had, initially there were some struggles, but it was more like establishing, boundaries and new stuff in the beginning, where it's like, as the authority figure person, you can do this, but you can't, I think with discipline, it's like sometimes it's like you gotta give a little.
I'm definitely more of a disciplinarian than Shannon, so we both of us kind of realize when the other person's approach is appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gotten easier.
Yeah.
Gotten easier. Mm-hmm. And it's, now I don't know, when we first started, when Johnny would ask for something, he would ask for dessert or something like that, or ask for a snack, and Johnny would always ask me for it, and Mark saw that as an affront, It
was a wise tactical decision by the young man, though, because often I would say no. So he knew what he was doing.
And, I had to kind of be like, okay, Mark, first of all, I am not a mush by any means. I do say no. But it's sometimes you have to say yes. You can't always say no.
I think I do okay now.
You do okay now.
No, I agree with that. And Adam and I, we balance each other out pretty well, too, because we can always tell when the other one's about to lose it. And then there's like, hey, you know what? Why don't you just relax, go over here. I've got this little brat. I got it. And we both lost it at different times, and that's the nice thing about having a partner is you have a team. You can kind of tag team.
Yeah, and somebody can tag you out sometimes. That's really nice. That just happened to me before the show. My 3-year-old asked for a muffin, and he eats muffins like he's 6 months old, and so there's always a huge mess. And so Steve was like, "Can you have a muffin?" I'm like, "Hell no, we can't have a muffin." He's like, "What?" He's like, "I don't think it's a big deal." I'm like, "He is not having a damn muffin. I don't feel like cleaning that up right now." And he's like, "Do you need a break? I feel like maybe you need a break." I was like,
Yep. That's how it goes in our house too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It definitely makes a difference having a good partner. Like my job as a parent has gotten so much easier since I've had Mark in my life because I have that option of being like, no, Mark is going to handle that right now. Mm-hmm. And I guess Johnny's so comfortable with Mark that it's okay. Like, Mark can pretty much do anything that I can do as far as Johnny's concerned, like tuck-ins and, like, stuff like that. Like, he doesn't care if he, like, says that he, loves Mark, and so it's very...
Sometimes he like with the tuck-in thing, sometimes he asks for one of us in particular. So he goes back and forth on who he's in the mood for.
Right, right.
When I'm following my stack, it's nice when you really lose it to have somebody to laugh about it with later.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember, I know we're way off topic, but a friend of mine that I went to college with, he and his wife has children a little bit younger than ours, and we were talking about, exchanging stories about when we lost it. And this guy is like, you meet him and he's like the nicest guy in the whole world. He never loses it. And he's telling me this story about he threw a toothbrush across the house because of something with the bedtime routine. And the daughter was just pushing and pushing and pushing, and finally he just threw the toothbrush. And we're all dying, like.
Right.
And just because as a parent you've been there and you know that everyone loses it at one point, and it was just fun. It was just really nice to be in that place to share those stories with someone who understands.
Yes, somebody who's willing to admit that they lose it too, because you have a lot of those parents who like pretend like they don't know what you're talking about, and maybe they don't. Maybe they're always 1,000% patient with their kids, but sometimes like I've had a lot of experiences where it's like I'm so upset. The only thing I could think of to say is like, "Are you serious? Are you serious right now? Is this happening? I don't even know what to say. Are you kidding me?" Because it's just, oh God, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
Okay, so I probably should get us back on track, although I could talk about this probably all night and we could all share some pretty awesome stories. But I'm really interested in something that you guys were doing, I think it was earlier this year, called Common Ground Activism. And I want to know if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. We started something called the Common Ground Conversation Series with Mark Sandlin, who is a progressive minister from North Carolina, who blogs for Pathos and the Huffington Post and his own website called thegodarticle.com. And the first event was in January at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland, and it was a conversation, not a debate. We went out of our way to make sure people understood that, and it featured Mark Sandlin and Jerry DeWitt, who many of us know and have read his book and care about a lot. Jerry was a Pentecostal minister who left the faith and was actually the first graduate of the Clergy Project. So we had Mark and Jerry talk about how the areas that really matter for daily life and for betterment of humanity in general don't really have much to do with faith when you're talking about atheist versus progressive faithful people. Things like LGBT equality, women's reproductive rights, the death penalty, separation of church and state, prayer in school, all those things. Mark and Jerry were almost could have been interchangeable, despite their views on God. And it was a very successful event, I think, for the first one. I think we sold like 75 seats, and we would have had more. We were planning to have another one in the early summer in North Carolina, but the schedules didn't line up for everyone. So we're going to do more of them. and Jerry has agreed to do more himself. When we first started, it was going to be different people speaking every time, but and we may get more people involved at some point, but as long as Jerry and Mark are interested in doing it, they're a pretty good fit.
They're very, very good fit. Actually, part of the reason why we didn't do it in the summer was because I went down to North Carolina to table at a progressive Christian festival that had thousands of people there. Mark Sandlin invited me, and that was incredibly eye-opening and really awesome. So there's a lot of things that progressive Christians and secular humanists and atheists have in common. And a lot of, like, the biggest response that I got when I was down there was that they were glad I was there. They were all just happy that I was there, which was amazing. You know, I got, like, some people trying to talk to me about religion and God and things like that, but really the overwhelming response was just being welcome and appreciated, and they loved what we were there to do. So there's a lot of work that can be done across the lines, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I spent so much time not talking about my atheism as a young adult, and you know, even into my late 20s, that I was actually surprised at how much support I got from my progressive Christian friends, because I just never talked about it before. And I've had a couple of my progressive Christian friends say, I totally support what you're doing, you're absolutely right about this, and I don't believe that. And it was just really refreshing, because I, at the time, I just really felt horrified by religion and any religious idea at all. And I still kind of am, but it's good to see that even, you know, there are theists that can find that balance in their lives, or they do actually care more about humanity than the afterlife, which is nice.
Well, and that's the thing that really sticks out when you talk to somebody like that, is that it really comes down to, one, the progressive Christians are just as upset with the conservative Christian mindset in America as we are. They're just as frustrated with the anti-gay marriage and the anti-woman stance of a lot of the conservative religious people. And they're just as marginalized by the conservative right as non-believers a lot of times. Sometimes they're even seen worse, because they are seen as a traitor within the midst, where they can take atheists and they can put us to the side and say, I know that they are evil, or whatever you want to call them. The progressive faithful, they don't know what to do with them, because they still feel like, well, they're still Christians, which is good, but they are doing all these things that they feel are destructive. So one of the biggest parts of Jerry and Mark's talk was how similar the problems faced by being a minority is between the progressive Christian and progressive religious group and the non-believers.
Right. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you, it's so easy to get off track. Back to the common ground discussions. Now, did Be Secular fund those, or is that something that you funded privately?
I'm sorry, did we fund them?
Did Be Secular, the organization, fund it, or was there another funding source?
No, it was us.
It was Be Secular and our private money too,
Which is
okay.
Which is a lot of what funds Be Secular.
Yes.
We started in the winter of 2012, and it's almost winter of 2014, and we're still not to the point where Be Secular can fund itself.
Okay.
We're getting closer.
Yeah, but we're getting closer. But despite the sales we've had and the success and the support, we still have to put in lots and lots of our own money too. But I mean, it's a labor of love still for us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's growing it. Like if we wanted the company to be self-sustaining, we could get away with that, but we wouldn't be able to do all the things that we really want to do if that were the case. So Be Secular is an LLC, which means that kind of like financially and tax-wise, it kind of flows through to its owners.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if Be Secular is paying for something, it's like we're paying for it,
or
vice versa.
For the Common Ground Conversation series, I mean, we paid for everything up front. We paid for the venue. We paid for the Shannon and I did the venue. We paid for flying Jerry up there, and we paid for Mark and Jerry's hotels. We paid for the catering. We paid for all that, and then the ticket sales paid some of that back. But not all of it. But I mean, that wasn't the goal, and it's not the goal. So.
The reason why I ask is because one of the things that I want to do is I want to promote you as a company that does these things, that's paying for these kinds of things. And so I really I didn't want to misrepresent what Be Secular does. And so this is something that you want to continue doing, and you want some of the money that you make from Be Secular to go towards these things. Am I right?
Well, ultimately, the ideal thing would be for Be Secular to bring in enough money from events, ticket sales to events, and cooperations and merchandise sales to fund itself and fund us. But until then, I mean, it would be great if we could just get to the point where we bring in enough money so that it could grow itself, and we're not even really there yet. But yeah, you're right about what you said.
Anyway, I just want to say that I think that's really amazing that you're doing more than just selling shirts to people, and I think a lot of people don't realize that you're doing so much more. You're really trying to start this conversation, which is a conversation that we need to have in the secular community. We need to be finding allies. Particularly with the progressive Christians, and I think that's a great way to do that. So I wanted to make sure that we got that out there, that this is something that Be Secular is doing.
Another thing that people that are watching or listening should know, a lot of people do know, but if you see us at an event tabling, with almost 100% certainty, with very few exceptions, the group that's putting on the event is getting half of the profits from our table. So, like, we were just in Chicago for the Humanism at Work conference, the first one, and
that Foundation Beyond Belief.
The Foundation Beyond Belief put on, and we raised like almost between $300 and $400 for them, right? Something like that. I think it was like $3.
No. We raised, it was $180, I think.
No.
Yes. You're thinking of total sales, honey.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we raised almost $200 for them directly, and they didn't really put any money into that. They just let us come and put up a table, and we gave them money. So, and then for Foundation Beyond Belief, we also did the podcast-a-thon in the spring with Secular FM. We raised a couple $1,000s for them there too. So that was good.
So Steve Hayes has a question. I want to make sure that I get to the Q&A this time. What kind of response are you getting from the atheist community in regards to what you are doing?
And I just asked him to clarify because I wasn't sure what he was talking about.
Okay.
So I just messaged him and I was like, "What the hell?"
Well,
I kind of know.
Yeah, we know.
Okay.
We know what you're talking about because we've had that question asked before, and really, we're getting, I would say, like almost all good supportive thoughts. Some people have said things like, if we support progressive Christians, we're giving cover to the more dangerous mindsets in Christianity, and I just straight don't believe that.
There's a reluctance.
Yeah, there's a reluctance for anyone to deal, some atheists to deal with anybody religious regardless, but for the most part it's been pretty good, the response.
It's been, yes, the response has been mostly all good, and what hasn't been good hasn't been bad. It's just been kind of like a, are you sure you want to...
Yeah, they're uncomfortable with it, or they're a little just, they don't feel like they wouldn't do it, that kind of thing. But we're talking we're speaking at the Pennsylvania Atheist and Humanist Conference in Pittsburgh at the end of the month. And our talk there is going to be about how there are different facets of activism being put forth by different groups. Like, American Atheist doesn't do the same thing that AHA does, and they don't do the same thing as Foundation Beyond Belief does, and Be Secular doesn't do the same thing as those groups, but they're all important, and there's a lot of different ways to skin the proverbial cat, I guess, as gruesome as that saying is. Right?
Yeah. I have another question here, and I'm going to summarize it. And basically, how do you feel about like a secular physical education? And that's the best way to summarize it. But basically, there are I think the most famous one recently is in California, where a group of parents opposed yoga being taught in their schools because they felt that was religious indoctrination. So, what are your thoughts on, religious objections to certain sorts of physical education, and then is there a secular physical education?
As far as yoga goes, I mean, I like to do it, but it's like, what are you doing when you're doing that? Like, are you asking kids to say things or think about certain things, or are you just asking them to move their bodies in a certain way? Yeah. I mean, that would make it secular if you just leave out the, I don't know, chakra kind of wooey ideas that...
The Deepak Chopra side of it.
Like, if you just don't say any of that and just encourage them to stretch and use their muscles, because yoga seems like a really good idea for physical education because it's very
super hard.
Well, it's very accessible for all different fitness levels. So, because you can modify things. But as far as, I'd never heard that.
I heard something like that before, and I think that just because a exercise, that's exactly what it is, was used predominantly, as far as I know, in a faith system, that doesn't mean that the movements associated with that exercise, I mean, if Mormons did jumping jacks, they'd still be good for you, That's how I look at it. Yoga's still good for you just because it's a spiritual thing for Hindus and things like that.
I think it scares certain Christians because it's like,
yeah, it's true.
You're letting the devil inside of you or something like that. I mean, really, if you're in a public school, the education should be secular, period. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't think that yoga is religious in nature unless you start talking about things.
A good rule of thumb should be, if the atheists aren't bitching about it being religious, it's probably not.
I think it's very easy to pull exercise, anything like that, exercise out of anything that's religious or spiritual teachings. And so, yeah, when I saw that case, when I read that article, man, that's a lot of bull. Those parents are way overreacting. Yoga's awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I've seen it. I mean, it's been incorporated almost into every other exercise program I've done. As far as stretching in the beginning and the end, they borrow a lot of things from yoga, even if it's, not a yoga-based program. So it just baffles me that people would think something like that. I mean, unless they're asking you to sit down and pray and, meditate or something. That seems crazy.
I think that might scare some people too, because and if you want to kind of venture into the realm of sexism, and you think about well, I don't want my little girl doing that, because she's stretching and her butt is in the air. I don't know, and she's getting into positions that are provocative because her legs aren't together. maybe that's another aspect of it.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Crazy conservatives. So my next question for you, my next question, and it's kind of a two-parter. So should families and children get involved in secular activism? So what do you think?
I
Is that
think
something we should be doing?
they should.
And if they want to.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people just don't want to, you know?
Right.
People should do what moves them, I think, as far as activism goes. Like, if protesting public religious displays just doesn't get you jazzed, then do something else. Like, you know, fight for women's rights or fight for secular education or whatever it is that you get excited about, that's what you should do. And that's what you should do with your kids, and I think that involving your kids in activism is a good idea because it's not so much like, I know that like some religious people would be like, oh, you're just indoctrinating them, just like you claim that we're doing to our kids, but it's what you're doing is you're encouraging them to pursue a passion. If they see their parents standing up for something, standing up for what they believe, and pursuing their passion and being active in the community, then they're more likely to do that as well.
I would challenge anyone that wanted to say that kids shouldn't be involved in activism to go to Madison Kimry's blog and read all the head slapping that she's doing in North Carolina. That's what I would do.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
And she's
what? You cut out.
She's 13.
Oh, she's 13. Okay.
Yes.
She just turned 13 too. Her blog is functionalhumanbeing.blogspot.com, and she's been on MSNBC and she's been on Huffington Post, and she takes her local government to task repeatedly over feminist issues and separation of church and state issues and education issues, and she has been for like a couple years now, and she's like, when is the women?
September 13th, I think.
There's a rally in D.C. Coming up where she's going to be speaking at. I don't have the information.
It's called It's the We Are Women rally.
We Are Women rally, and she's really a powerhouse at such a young age. So I mean, she's an example of what kids can do.
And I know that she gets a lot of encouragement from her parents.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah,
So,
I'll post a link to her blog. I agree. Her blog is really good. I enjoy reading it from time to time.
and it's easy to forget that she's still a kid.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, she definitely writes like an adult. So you kind of touched on my next question, and that's just basically what are some things that families can do together? What kinds of activism activities are there out there that adults and children can do together?
First of all, I would say like only be active if you feel safe doing so. You know, like if you feel like you are going to lose a job or lose your livelihood or lose something very important or your kid will be in danger, then don't feel pressured to put yourself out there. But if you feel very comfortable and confident and you have lots of community support, there's lots of stuff that you can do. There are lots of local humanist chapters. We have one. They're doing a drive for school supplies on Saturday, which just is showing up to a place and with a table and asking people to donate supplies, and you can do that with your kids.
And that kind of stuff is super powerful because it's just the community seeing humanists doing good stuff. That's a big deal. It's just seeing people that are non-believers doing good things is a good thing because twofold, because of the good things they're actually doing and from the perception that it helps improve for non-believers in the community, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you say that because my husband has talked about doing things like that, you know, in the name of atheism or his podcast, and I initially disagreed with him. I don't know how I feel about it now, but I initially disagreed with him because I thought, well, you know, if you wrap your name around a sandwich that you give to the homeless, that just seems tacky to me. And so he's like, no, but I think that it's really important to improve the reputation of atheists and humanists because they get, you know, obviously they're a really hated group. So it's interesting that you say that because that's something that he's mentioned as well that I was really unsure about.
Well, it's not only a PR thing, it's also an awareness thing. Like, people need to know not only that there are atheists and that there are humanists, but that we're active in our community and that we're making room for them. Like, we need to be welcoming. We need to be providing support. That's one way that churches still, and probably for a while until we are able to catch up, have the secular community beat. Is they provide childcare, they provide food, they provide shelter, they provide all kinds of things for their community.
And they provide a social norm that being out and vocal about your non-belief and your compassion, both your non-complete belief and still compassion for others is important because everybody knows, and this is public knowledge, and it's people talk about it all the time, but one of the biggest problems in the atheist movement are the nuns and the non-believers that think that they're alone. They think that they're the only ones that doubt. They think they're the only ones that don't believe. So if we see like Shannon and I, whenever we give money to someone, if there's Girl Scouts out there, or if there's a homeless person out there, and we give them $1, or we give them $5 or $10, or we do something, we always mention that we're atheists. Not necessarily because of the people that are getting it, but you never know who's walking by, you never know who's hearing things being said, and all it takes is one person to hear you say that you're an atheist, and I want you to know that I'm not a bad person, that I'm trying to do the right thing, that may go home, look something up online, and really change their life. I mean, I think it was David Smalley that said, the next person whose mind you change may change 1,000 minds, and that's a good way to look at it.
And you know, and that's something that is important to me as well because I was 12 when I decided that yes, I was an atheist, but I had been questioning probably for a couple years before that, and I met my very first agnostic when I was 15, and I was in college before I met anyone who said they were an atheist. And so I really felt alone for a long, long time, and it didn't even, well, first of all, there wasn't internet, by the way, in this time, so I couldn't like go on the internet and find all these groups that are out there now. I didn't know American Atheists exists. Nobody ever talked to me about these things. And so just from my own personal experience of just feeling alone as an atheist in the world, I think it's very important to go out there and say who you are. And I like that idea of just when you're on the street, a passerby might feel alone in their questioning or their non-belief, and you just made them feel less alone. I like that a lot, and it's one of the reasons why I've decided to become more vocal as well. Not only just reflecting on my own experience, but also thinking about my children and making sure my children don't feel that way as they, you know, try to figure out what they believe. Because, you know, I'm not telling them what to believe.
He's got a good speech about that I've heard a few times, where he's just talking about how important it is to be an out atheist because of whoever you may influence and why it's important. I mean, people watching this can go on YouTube and find it. After this, don't turn off now, but later.
I can post a link to it, too, if you email it to me.
Yeah, I'll find it.
So I have another question from Steve. It says, I can only speak from experience, and you touched on it earlier, but having conversations with religious people can sometimes be difficult. What kind of ways can you help keep your calm? What kind of ways can you help keep your calm when having or in prep for these conversations? So how do you keep your cool?
I think, first of all, everybody is kind of in their own, they're in their own headspace, they're on their own journey, and a lot of times, especially for people that are kind of new into their atheism, they're still very angry about things that were done to them or things that were told to them by religion. If you're still a very angry person about religion, then maybe you should postpone getting into, you know, those big discussions with religious people, because you still have a lot of personal biases against it, which is okay. But as far as like me, it's just I kind of make a decision, and it depends a lot about like what the other person's intent is. Is the other person trying to learn? Is the other person asking sincere questions? Or is the other person trying to get under my skin or trying to convince me that I'm going to help? If I think that they're being sincere, then I try to be as patient as possible, because I know that the interaction that they're having with me is probably way more important to them than it is to me, because I've already arrived in my conclusions. You know, I am very comfortable with where I am and what I believe. If somebody that is religious is talking to you about it, they're the ones that are probably uncomfortable.
And I would encourage anyone that's getting into a conversation with anyone about religion in any aspect, that they consider a couple things right away. Like one, like Shanon said, what is their intent? Are they trying to learn, or are they trying to just convince or agitate? And two, take into context the environment too. Like if I'm at work, for example, and people know that I'm an atheist there, some of them are just like that. That's fine with me. But some of them do occasionally try to convince me of things. And in that environment, I take the approach of not engaging combatively or at all, really. I just say that, you know, we both kind of know where we stand on this. I don't really want to get into this conversation because it could be detrimental to our friendship or our working relationship. And weirdly, a lot of them take that as me giving up or backing down, but it's just a protection mechanism for me. And I think sometimes you just have to do that, because a lot of times just saying you believe differently than someone makes them automatically get on the defensive, like you're saying I'm an idiot because I believe differently than you. And sometimes maybe we are saying that, but sometimes and often we're not.
Or maybe we're thinking it.
Right, or we're thinking it.
I think it's really important to not, it's like the moment that you become emotional about what you're talking about, and emotional in like you feel defensive or you feel attacked, you're going to start losing the argument because you're becoming less rational and you're not thinking as clearly. If you feel like you are starting to get too angry to think clearly, or to really talk to the other person and communicate, you kind of have to back away from the situation and be like, look, I respect you as a human being. It's like, this is not a personal thing, but we obviously disagree on this, and I cannot help you with this any further. Like, sometimes that's it. You just can't talk to people about it anymore. You're just done, you know? I mean, like, what are you supposed to do with somebody that's a creationist, that's convinced of creationism? I mean, do you really have the time and energy to devote to going over information with them that's readily available if they really wanted it?
And you'll often get into situations where all of the evidence that they fall back on is personal experience, that most of that is confirmation bias. But even if they remember something that happened to them in a certain way, that you can't really ever disprove that. So it's a waste of time, and it just makes them angry. So trying to disprove what someone thinks they experienced is almost impossible, and is just going to really piss them off.
Well, I think it's important also that when you come to the conversation. Like you said, it's important not to be emotional. So if you're immediately aggressive or snarky or condescending as an atheist, I think that's also really detrimental to not only, you know, the movement as a whole, but also your own credibility. You know, because nobody wants to have a conversation with somebody who's shouting at them. And so, yeah, I think I have known a lot of atheists, like you said, that's probably coming from a place of anger where they immediately, like, it feels like they're attacking the theist or the creationist, like, right from the beginning, because they have a huge bias about it, and so it's hard to discuss it rationally.
One thing that that I do, depending on the situation, I do try to find things that we agree on. Now, if I'm talking to a young Earth creationist, I'm probably not going to find that. But if I'm talking to like a moderate or progressive Christian, I can usually get them to agree with me on something, and then go from there. And you know, and maybe I won't change their mind, but at least maybe I'll soften their view on atheists or where we stand. Politically, socially, things like that. But I also wanted to say that I personally don't engage in those conversations because at a certain point I am going to get snarky.
Yeah.
And and the thing is, I've done it for so long. I'm 37. I've been doing it since I was 12. I'm just tired of the conversation. I don't want to have the conversation anymore. I've heard all the arguments. You know, I've read pieces of religious literature. I just can't anymore. And like you said, Shannon, it's like go read about evolution on the internet. I don't need to educate you on that. Pick up a book. And so I think to go towards Steve's question is just draw a line as far as what you're going to talk about. You know, if you know that you're going to get snarky, if people start talking about evolution and it's a lie, don't have that conversation. Change it to something else that's isn't going to get you, you know, pissed off. So let me see here. Anything else you guys wanted to add to that?
No, I think, you know, know your boundaries, know where your line is, and, you know, don't feel like you have to go over it. You don't owe everyone your time and attention. Just because somebody is pestering you with questions that can easily be answered by the internet, which is readily available, doesn't mean, you know, you don't have to explain this stuff to people if you don't want to, and that's okay.
In Rome, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. If you can just, if your goal is to make everyone doubt and everyone not be religious, that's going to be tough. But if that is your goal, all you have to do is plant a seed or two of doubt that they go investigate. Because if they start investigating it, it's going to lead not to magic, you know? So if you put that out there and let them run with it, you know, who knows where they'll end up.
And then Jeremy commented here, being angry in a conversation rarely leads us humans to a constructive outcome, which I agree, unless the goal is very clearly defined and all the people talking have the same definition and want to achieve it. So I definitely agree with him there.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. And I wanted to draw the conversation back to secular activism, and actually I think that was directly related to secular activism. I guess twist the conversation in a different way, because talking to people is certainly a part of activism. But I wanted to just ask again: is there anything else that we can do with our children that would, that would help us achieve this goal of this secular activism? I can't form the question the way I want to form it.
If you have the resources, send your kids to Camp Quest. If you don't have the resources, get in touch with the groups that try to send kids to Camp Quest that don't have the resources. That's one of the best things you can do for your kids, because they're going to be surrounded by other non-believing kids, which they may not have access to the rest of the year. So I encourage everyone to do that if they can.
Yeah, definitely. I think doing whatever you can. I mean, if you don't have the extra time or money or the extra energy, I mean, having small kids is exhausting. Even just being online and talking to your kids about skepticism and asking them what they think about things and teaching them about science. I mean, teaching your kids is an activism because they're going to grow up to be adults and they're going to be the next people, and they could be the next activists.
And let them know that it's okay to not know the answer to something. Don't try to, I mean, religion often tries to jam every I don't know with God or create or something of that ilk. So let them remind them that there's things we don't know and that we're studying them, and there's a world of information for them to look up. It's okay to not know something.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I just recently started doing with my daughter is she'll ask me a question, I don't know the answer, and I'm like, but you can look that up on the internet. She's like,
Right,
yeah, she can read, and so I don't have to do it for her, and I'm kind of a lazy mom like that, and so I'm like, go look it up on the internet. I don't know, and it's I think it's kind of a sense of empowerment for her because she can go get her own answers. She's not relying on one or two sources for information, and that's kind of one of the downfalls of religion, in my opinion, is the reliance on one source for all of your information. It's ridiculous, and so that's one of the things that I do with my kids as well is teaching them to go to different sources, find answers in other places, and not just me. I'm not the authority on everything. I'm the authority on this house, what you're going to eat for dinner, what time you're going to go to bed, but I'm not the authority on dragonflies. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's really good, actually. Maybe I'll start telling my son to start looking some things up. Sometimes we'll look things up together, like he'll ask me a question and I won't know, but then I'm curious what the answer is.
And then you spend 3 hours diving through links on Wikipedia. So
Yes.
you can't always do that. You have to let them do it.
Yep.
And
I agree, though. There are times where I'm like, oh, I don't know. Let's go find out. That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, I've done that a couple times before with Johnny. I think also teaching your kids empathy is really important. And like Johnny was out with his friends, and a bunch of kids at the park were picking on one of his friends, who's a girl, and saying that she dressed like a boy, and that she looked like a boy, which really hit one of my hot buttons because I kind of hate that kind of stuff. But I know that I can't fight all of Johnny's battles for him, and that I can't just storm onto the playground and be like, "Rah, kids!"
Shin smash.
Yes, but I said, Johnny, you're gonna have to start, standing up to these kids, which is a form of activism. And he said, well, what should I say? And it's like, my parents always encouraged me to either punch the kids or make fun of them for something, which really isn't the best way to handle things.
Oh,
so
man.
I said, Johnny,
oh, the 80s.
why don't you ask them how they would feel if somebody made fun of them for the way that they looked? And it's like, if you ask a kid a question like that, like, they're not expecting that. They're not expecting that kind of a question. Maybe they'll think about it, or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll continue to be jerks. But at least you tried. And I try to help them stand up to kids in school that, I don't know if I would say bully him because of his atheism, but they pick on him a little bit.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's like you just have to give your kids the tools that they need and then send them out into the world and hope you did a good enough job.
That's it.
Yeah. I have to agree, Shannon, with what you said about empathy, because that's actually one of the biggest things
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Gone. She's had a strict timer of 1 hour.
No doubt. Yeah, empathy is a big thing in my house too. But also just having the tools to stick up for yourself and to stick up for other people, I also think is very important. My daughter has experienced a little bit of bullying this last school year. They told her a couple of kids told her because she didn't believe in God that she wasn't trustworthy, and therefore she wasn't allowed to do certain things in the classroom when the teacher wasn't looking. And she just kept doing her thing, you know. She's like, F you guys. I'm gonna do my thing, and you don't like me. Too bad. And I was really proud of her for that. I'm also proud of her for coming to me and talking to me about it so that we could then take it to the teacher and have the teacher try to address it. But we have Amanda back.
What happened? It said this video call ended because of an error, and I was like, okay, it didn't like what I was saying. Now I'm sad. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't cut me off again. But I was going to say I'm a huge advocate for emotional intelligence over IQ for kids, because I feel like it's way more important to teach your kids how to function in a society and care for other people and be accepting of other people than it is to graduate with honors and be the smartest person that you know. So I think that's one of my favorite things to talk about and to teach to kids and be supportive of is accepting other people and sticking up for other people if they need help. I think that's really important. Obviously I worry about them being like in harm's way if the child's being physically violent, but at the same time I still think a lot of people, even kids, will look the other way because it doesn't concern them, and I don't want my kids to be that person. I want them to be the champion of other humans. So I like what you said about empathy. I think it's super important. Empathy
is a learned trait, and a lot of people don't realize that. That's not something that's innate in people. A lot of people just think, well, don't worry, they'll get it. Well, they might if they've had the right combination of experiences. But usually that's something that's consciously taught to people, to care about other people and to care about other people's emotions.
Well, yeah, and kids are intrinsically really hedonistic when they're growing up. So it does take a lot of work to teach them that the world doesn't revolve around them.
Yep. So our time is up, and Mark and Shannon, I wanted to give you a chance to express any last-minute thoughts or promote anything that you wish to promote, like Be Secular.
Yeah, our websites are obviously besecular.com. If you buy items from there and select groups from the drop-down, they get up to 50% of the profits. You can select any one of the groups. Of course, Godless Family Resources one. Our Facebook page is just search Be Secular and it'll come up. The Twitter account is @BeSecular. Also, I've just started doing a podcast with Aaron Ra. We have one episode out so far. It's on YouTube. You can find it on Aaron's YouTube page, or at the website the RA-Men, because that's the name of the podcast, the Ra Men Podcast. We're on Spreaker and SoundCloud, and we're getting on iTunes and Stitcher as well. So this Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, we will be talking live with Paul Schmidt. He is a entrepreneur and an atheist, and he is pumping a bunch of his financial capital into a fusion power company that is trying to make the power grid for the world. So that would be really exciting. If you know anything about Aaron and his scientific mind, I'll be sitting there marveling at those two while they talk about power. So tune into that. Shannon's blog is at secularsunshine.com. She writes seldom but powerfully, I would say. All of her pieces have been very well received, and I sometimes still see them shared by people I don't even know. So there must be some good stuff on there.
There's some parenting stuff.
Yeah, there is.
I write about my adventures in parenthood sometimes.
Great, great. I'm always trying to read other parenting blogs and taking little pieces and posting, taking ones that I think are particularly good and posting them to share with my my viewers or my audience.
Thank you for having us on.
Yes, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for coming on and explaining what you guys do, because I think what you do is really amazing.
Thank you for thanking us. But before this turns off, if you're in the Pennsylvania especially in the Pittsburgh area, Labor Day weekend in Pittsburgh is the PA Atheists Conference. We're going to be speaking there. Then we'll be at the Women's Rally in D.C. on the 13th. Shannon will be there. And then Shannon will also be at ApostaCon in Omaha in September. And in October, we'll be speaking again at the Florida Free Thought Conference in Orlando.
And the Carolinas.
And the Carolina Secular Conference. Shannon will be there, too, in September. So
you guys are busy.
Get your tickets to those things and come see us.
Great. Amanda, anything you wanted to share?
Well, I almost feel guilty for bringing this up, but on Thursday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, Steve and David, my husband, and his co-host of ProphetCast are going to be on Atheist Hangouts with Adam Reeks. But, you know.
And
yeah,
David Viviano.
Well,
yeah. Well, yeah, but those are the other guests. What'd you say?
Listen, like you don't have to
you
listen
can listen
to
later.
Mark's
Yeah,
podcast
listen
right
to it on
away.
the speaker
You
later.
can listen to it later. It's okay.
And it's funny because Viviano and I have been friends for so long, and when he found out that Aaron and I were doing a podcast on Thursdays at 10, he got really frustrated. But ours is only bi-weekly, so that's not every week. This weekend it happens to line up, but you can catch us on Spreaker or SoundCloud after the fact. That's fine.
Yeah,
I
same thing.
rarely watch live, so I'm usually too busy at 10 o'clock. I want to go to bed. But go ahead, Amanda. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah, you can watch that one after the fact too, but I did want to put it out there. And then obviously watch ProphetCast on Sundays. It's 9:30 Pacific time because we're all on the East Coast, and I'll be on that with David next Sunday, and that's it.
Awesome. And then next week, I wanted to say that we don't have any guests, and so Amanda and I decided that it would be fun for us to dig into the Bible and do kind of an educational episode. So we're going to be looking at stories in the Bible that are commonly taught to children and are thought of as children's stories, and, dissect them. So it'll be fun, so you should watch and ask us questions about those stories.
Great.
And I think that's it, unless there are any last-minute comments.
Nope.
Just thanks for having us.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for watching the Godless Family webcast, and I hope to see you next week. And there.